And when you're building a life for yourself, you got to build, you are you first before you are a member of your family or before you are a member of society. So you got to make yourself good to like, I think fully, get to the next stage, which is family, and then get to the next stage, which is maybe school or society or a town or whatever it is. But so I think the self is the most fundamental. And so that's the real core.
On today's Eye of Power episode, it's my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome my nephew, Tim Dardick, on the show with me. Tim is a young professional working in the hazardous wastelands of Washington, D.C., in the field of politics. So he has an interesting walkthrough in his young career thus far. And what I was hoping to get from Tim is his perspective on his generation entering the workforce and what are the dynamics that they need to learn and keep in mind, but also those of us who are already established in the workforce, what do we need to know and what should we keep in mind to be able to give them a helping hand and move them as forward and in as positive a direction as we can. So what are those challenges and what are perhaps some of those solutions? So it's my great honor and privilege to welcome my nephew, Tim Dardick, to the show. Welcome to the Eye of Power podcast. I'm your host, Tom Dardick. But this podcast is not about me. It's about you and your power. It's time to claim yours. Welcome to my nephew, Tim Dardick, who works and resides near and around Washington, D.C., the nerve center of the free world.
Whether we like it or not.
Yeah, right. And he works in politics. And so I thought he was a very well-positioned person to speak to about not just politics in general, but politics specifically from somebody of the entering generation, of somebody coming in new into the younger, sort of the first wave of the working experience world in the world of politics, to see a fresh perspective, to see what the generational differences might be, so that we might be able to bridge some gaps possibly, or at least be aware of where those differences are. So that's what we'll be talking about today. So I hope that we can find some conversational gold in what we're talking about, huh?
Absolutely. Lot to dig up.
So, all right. So let's dive in, Tim, by just going a little bit into your walk. You graduated from Catholic University.
Graduated from Catholic University back in
Did you
21.
think you were going to get into politics right out, or what?
Not at all. No, definitely not. I majored in history, so I was thinking more like something scholarly, something to do with museum studies, something a little more like academic.
And you did work in a museum you worked in the Spy Museum, right?
Yep. I worked for a museum in college and out of college for a little bit. I also I interned with the research department of the history department at Catholic University as well.
Okay.
At the end of my time, so I thought I was going down that path, but college was ending. I was just kind of setting my application out anywhere, setting out job applications anywhere that would take it. And the first place that accepted me was a political job. So I took that and kind of started down that path.
Would you say that the mindset of just sort of throwing your resume out there, trying to get gainful work in any way you could, would that be typical of your friends, your peer group? Would you say that?
Absolutely. I think everyone had like their little areas they kind of vaguely knew. I knew I was going for stuff in museums, but also I minored in politics, so I knew I had a background there. And also like I was applying to sales jobs because I thought I could do that pretty well. And I've had other customer facing jobs before, but I had other friends that were applying for any kind of accounting job they could, any kind of computer science, but it's kind of like a spray and pray approach. I think a lot of kids are taking towards getting jobs after college.
So you ended up working in the office for one of the members of Congress.
Yep, that's right.
You come in, you're kind of low person on the totem pole. My guess is you got to do all the stuff nobody else wants to do. Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of answering phone calls. I was lucky enough. I didn't have to make too many coffee runs. I just had to make sure coffee was in the Keurig at all times. But I didn't do a lot of chores, luckily. But still, it was a lot of answering phone calls from constituents. It was a lot of making sure the office ran on time, making sure like I was the first one in there opening everything and making sure we still had like pens and pencils and all the office supplies in there.
So making sure the trains ran on time in the
Yeah,
station.
yeah, that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
then just like assisting anyone with any kind of grunt work they needed.
So what were some of the things in that role, especially as it related to being facing forward to constituents in calls? Were most calls coming in warm and fuzzy, or were they complaints, or what was
Oh, we had
the?
a good amount of both.
Yeah. Okay. So what was your experience with that?
It was interesting. I mean, because like again, being the low man and kind of just jumping in, you don't really know all the details right away, and you're kind of just put on the phone. So you kind of have to like learn how to sound intelligent and kind of like learn on the fly, you know. So a lot of it was, people had questions on bills. So there are a
Okay.
couple web databases for all the bills people want to know about. So I'd either direct them there or like kind of pull it up myself real quick and skim a little bit and give a little analysis on what they're doing or what the congressman would be doing or what
So you
the
tried
other
to
side
add
would be trying.
so you tried to add a little bit more value than just sort of being a human robot kind of.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit more than just like I'll pass your message on to the congressman.
Yeah. What were you thinking as far as your
I was thinking I
experience?
got to get out of here. Is what I was
Yeah.
thinking. I was thinking, I didn't mind doing it. And it was interesting to see like the heartbeat of like a congressional office.
Yeah.
It was something I didn't. I had vague ideas of in my head, but I never really like thought about or did much research on. So it was fascinating from like a curiosity standpoint. But I don't know. It gets draining being on the phone all the time, and it gets a little draining. Being a part of like a big machine that it was hard for me to find my niche there, and I wanted to find my
Okay.
niche is how I'd phrase it. So
All right.
I
So
was
you
I was really a lot of my time was thinking about how I could transfer the skills I got into the next thing.
okay. And so what was the next step then?
So the next step was I kind of got into political digital marketing. So
Okay.
a lot of emails, maintaining social media, building websites, maintaining text lists and sending texts, that kind of stuff.
So was this the kind of thing that your experience in college made a difference, or was it just you're smart enough to be able to do these things, so you did them, or what was it?
College a little bit, but I mean, a lot of it was like hobbies and other jobs I had. To be honest, like
Okay.
I think I learned how to be better around people and how to handle pressure better outside of school. I think it was like working customer service jobs. I worked for a catering business for a long time. I worked at Walmart for a little bit, and then again, my museum experience. That kind of that taught me how to like deal with people in a professional and kind of thoughtful way. Maintaining goals and
And
everything.
so that started translating into doing a good job with the digital reach and
Yeah,
the marketing
because
reach.
digital people are people too. I say a lot in my job, and you got to know how they're thinking, right, and how to
Yeah.
engage with them in the best way. So
Yeah.
I think all of that time in front of people taught me a thing or two just about people and human nature, and I think that helped me. And also, it gave me a good head on my shoulders and gave me some confidence to actually write and exist. And
During
you know,
this time, after a little bit, you're no longer the newest person in the office, right?
yep.
So what would you see looking around you as far as the were there generational differences, or were you impressed with your peers, unimpressed with your peers? What's your read on the that world as far as your people that you worked with?
I think that there are generational differences in the various places of work, but often it's young. It's usually like people 35 and under. I'd say by and large, by far,
So the
unless you get to
so
like the higher levels, in which case,
so the at the retail politics level, it's for newbies
for
basically.
newbies, and then even just on Capitol Hill, all of those like office jobs, like in a congressional office, it's usually people 35 or under.
Okay. They're coming out there and generally, they're pretty ambitious, or are they?
Pretty ambitious, yeah, yeah. You have the people there that really are into policy and the law itself, and kind of helping make the law and informing Congress people about it. So you had the people that were on that track, and then you also had the people that liked communicating and liked kind of running social media for those people. So it was usually those. Either you liked writing bills and writing analyses on bills, or you liked writing op-eds and tweets. And I think that kind of work just kind of attracts younger people to start, and then some people stay and some people go.
So the track that you've been on lately, so bring us up to the current state of things then.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm still in the digital marketing world for
Yeah.
politics, but instead of like executing and fundraising and persuading like I used to do, I'm now kind of teaching it to other people at like smaller
Okay,
levels.
so You've done it a few times, well enough to be able to bring the newer people up to speed.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, you've also had some experiences. You were able to, I know you were able to go down to Puerto Rico for a while and some other
Yep, yep.
places.
So that was the other benefit to my job right now is I got to travel around a little bit and see firsthand what the operations were like over there, but also for my own benefit. I learn a lot by traveling, so I think I learn more about myself every time I do that.
Yeah. You learn about yourself, and I suppose you meet some other people from various
You meet other
places.
people and you get perspective, and you see where you begin and also where you end. You see your own boundaries and you see
Okay.
other people's more clearly when you're doing that as well.
What are some of the things that you would like for people that have been in the workplace place for, let's say, 2 or more decades? They've been out there, they've already passed all this stage. From your perspective, what do they underappreciate for those that are just starting out, would you say?
I think the kids starting out have just less work experience and less experience with other people in the real world as other generations have before. I think that they're like kids coming out now have lived in virtual worlds better, so they can do some of that stuff better. But so that's undervalued and underestimated at the same time.
Okay, so they're used to interfacing through what we're doing right now or through
Yeah, yeah, through
at
all that,
arm's
and
length.
and it's a different way of thinking. I think they think a little more short term, kids now, than they always do a little bit, but I think it's a little more instantaneous. It's a little more like quick, go, go, go. This thing, on to the next.
Okay. So
So
chasing
I
the
think attention spans as well have changed.
chasing the shiny object.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And
But the benefit to that is you can find things quicker. The young
true.
kids find new things quicker.
Okay. And at the cost of maybe not being able to concentrate or
Not
stay
being able
with
to
a task.
concentrate, lacking wisdom, lacking patience and decision making outside of they kind of they get caught up in their own heads easier because they have less grounding them.
So being caught up in your own head, what's the cost of that, would you say? What's the problem there?
I think a lot. There's a lot wrong with that. I think it's hard to build a good foundation for yourself if you're questioning every little thing you do, which is what a lot of kids are doing. I think that's one of the big problems of my generation, quite frankly.
So there a lot of insecurity.
Almost all of it, almost all of it's insecurity. I think.
I've heard I've heard Geneva talk about that.
Mhm.
She's a veterinary student at University of Florida, and she talks about that level of insecurity, and it's kind of surprised me because I'm thinking, it took out of 2 or 3 thousand applicants, they took 150.
Yep. Yep.
And these are not just any old applicants. These are, vet school
Hmm.
medical
Hmm.
school,
Got to be
graduate
smart
school applicants. So
to make
you're
that cut to begin with.
you're already starting above average by a
Hmm.
lot, and now you're the top 150 out of that,
Out of 2,000 or
theoretically.
more.
And she reports the same thing you report, where there's so much insecurity and inability to, that impetuousness or that inability to concentrate on things. She reports the same thing among her peers too. So it's not just in the world of politics or in the
Certainly
DC
not.
area.
I think this
It's
is super fundamental to kids my age or younger, and
yeah.
even a little older. But I think
And
I think the core of it is that there's a real lack of self love.
of self-love. Okay. And maybe some detachment from others, perhaps. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think that comes with it. But I think it all starts with a detachment from the self.
from the self. Okay.
Because
And
when you're building a person and when you're building a life for yourself, you got to build. You are you first before you are a member of your family or before you are a member of society. So you got to make yourself good. But to I think fully, get to the next stage, which is family, and then get to the next stage, which is maybe
yeah.
school or society or a town or whatever it is. But so I think the self is the most fundamental, and so that's the real core.
And you'd say your generation is maybe do you perceive them being behind other generations, or do you think it's just part of being young?
It's part of being young, but I think some things have changed. I think because we do live in virtual worlds, and I think school has changed as well. So I think that kids have less stake in the game in school. You can coast easier. If you turn in an assignment, you're probably going to pass. You know,
Mm.
teachers are just happy to get assignments at all. There isn't a lot of actually grading you for the work you do. There isn't a lot of reason to strive. There's just a lot of reason to do the bare minimum, and it's pretty easy to do that.
So the
So
bar
I
is
think there's
low.
a lack of adventure and a lack of A lack of opportunity for kids to kind of find themselves and overcome hardship. I spoke earlier about finding the boundary of where you begin and end, and where other things and other people begin and end, other events. I think
Hmm.
there's a lack of opportunity for kids to find that.
That's interesting. I'm trying to figure out what that would be like. I mean, again, I'm pretty old, but my memory going back, 40 plus years, I'm trying to think, okay, what was on my mind? And I remember that phase of my life. I was mainly concerned with finding girls.
Yeah, no, well, exactly. Finding girls. Did you play sports? Or, you had some hobbies, right?
Yeah, I was an athlete until I got mono, and then I got into
Mhm.
being a musician.
Yep, yep.
So it was
So I think
bands, things
hobbies
like
still
that.
exist, but hobbies are a little more passive now. I think they get you outside less. I mean, kids still play sports and kids still go outside a little bit. We'll learn music, but it's easier to listen to music than it ever was. There's Spotify and YouTube you can just listen to a lot and never learn how to play it. Video games exist more, and a lot of kids find that like adventure in video games, which I played a lot of video games as a kid. I'm not poo pooing video games, but
Right.
I think kids are finding other outlets. A lot of that's through social media as well. There's a lack of like fluidity. It's all kind of in a bunch of different spheres. It's not
Yeah.
just you go out in real life and you meet people. It's like, oh, you could see people on Twitter, you could see people on Instagram, you could see people you game with, you could see people in real life a little bit. It's kind of confusing. There's a lot to like take in. It's information overload.
Well, let's say you're playing a game or on Discord or you're whatever, you're in a social setting, but it's a virtual social setting. Are the rules different there than if you would meet somebody at a party or out at a club or something?
I think so. I think I mean a lot of rules still apply. It's still a social interaction, but it's more limited because you just don't have the visual often. And even if you do, it's like us right now through a screen.
Right.
It's only their top half or just their face, and if they're moving their arms around like me, like there is still a lack of everything. A lot of the time it's just a voice, and you're trying to pick up on implicit information and body language just through voice, and that can be that can slow things down or cause people to be a little more cautious.
So, would you say people are less connected to others than they used to be? Would that be true? Less
Yeah. I think
with
people
a
have more opportunities to talk to others, but I think they have less opportunities to like physically bond with others. So
so it's not that we have fewer connections, it's that might even have more connections, but they're not quite as
you get less value
viscerally.
out of each connection that
What's
way.
that?
You get less value out of each connection that way.
So they're not as deep and meaningful.
Not as deep as meaningful. You're kind of going over the same things you normally do. You're just kind of bantering. Occasionally you have a really deep talk. Late night on Discord, or as we are here, we just decided to hop on and have a good conversation. That will happen, but you kind of got to look for that, or it just kind of happens naturally, slowly. When you're with someone, if you're going out to a bar, there's a ton of other things happening around you. There
Yeah,
could be
you're
a bar fight next to you, and you have to react to that and move out of the way. You could be on the dance floor and someone could come up to you. There's just like more opportunity to learn and to like react to things outside of you.
right. You're actually having a shared experience.
You're having a shared experience. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. That's a more like intuitive stimuli. That's like if something happens and you have to react to it. Whereas like on the phone, you kind of have to just choose what to talk about, and it has to be more intentional.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing the interviews for the podcast now for a few months, and I'm really happy with the quality of conversations, and I feel very connected to people.
Mhm.
But I think that that's because we're talking about stuff that I think really matters. I mean,
Yeah. Yep.
the eye of power is about, the things that matter most to us, our agency, our potency, our
Mhm.
ability to not only be the hero of our story, but the author to some degree of our story. And, that agency and what are the things that stop it? What are the things that promote it? When you're talking about those things, it naturally gets you into a connection because you're trying to dig to the real. But
You're
if you're
digging to the
talking,
real, you're digging a little deeper, and you're making yourself vulnerable. It's kind of hard to talk about making connection. There's
yeah,
real social risk and just personal emotional risk, and like
yeah, I suppose that's true. And when you're trying to get to the real, if you're if you're not honest and open, your chances of getting anywhere to the real are close to nil,
oh,
right?
completely.
It
You're getting an
requires,
approximation at best in that way, you know?
yeah, you're still in playland, right? So you're trying ideas on for size maybe, but you're not really entering the cave. You're not taking the
No,
risk
no,
of
not at all. You're
going
kinda
deep into the, yeah, into the mire of it. And so the conventions of a game, or one thing that you and I share is a passion for music.
that's right, that's right.
And so I'm constantly amazed by your ability to remember and know so many different, I mean, I don't know that there isn't a genre that you aren't close to expert in. And I don't and
I
I'm like,
try to be, I try to
and
be.
how and I'm wondering, how do you have so much time to hear it all? I'm trying to, like, I've been getting into progressive music pretty much my whole adult life, and I feel like I barely know it. It's like, but
I'm
then
just
again,
always listening to music. I just like when I'm working, if I'm not like in a meeting or if I'm not talking to someone, I have an AirPod in. I'm just listening to it
so you're just
while I read.
mainlining.
You know, I have a record player. I'll throw it on while I'm reading, or if I'm watching like a show in the background, I'll also have music on. It's just a constant throughout my day
So you got a soundtrack going, but it's
at
not
all times.
just that,
At all times.
because a lot of people are exposed to things. They don't retain them like you do. So it's not just that you're exposed to it, it's that you're passionate about it.
Exactly,
Y-
and I
yeah.
think I built up like a good intuitive muscle for picking up on things. I think like when I started getting really into music, it was like my junior or senior year of high school, and I was like discovering all of the Beatles albums for the first time. You know, I knew Beatles songs, and I like Beatles One was like the first CD I remember getting as a kid, and I still did listen to CDs back then. I was old enough for that. You know, when I was getting into it, it took me like at least 5 to 10 times to really understand Sergeant Pepper or like Revolver or like Wish You Were Here. You know, and it was great to listen to those and just discover every little moment. It took a long time to get what I got out of those albums. I think now I can listen to a similar album, like from a modern progressive rock band that probably has as much detail as Pink Floyd put into "Wish You Were Here," but I just kind of know what to listen for intuitive. You know, you
So
build
yeah,
muscles.
you have a practiced ear.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And it's funny because when you're a musician, you hear things in music that if you're not a musician, you really don't hear. And
no,
so
no, not at
you're a
all.
musician, so you're able to pick out things. I mean, I remember when I was younger, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference whether it was a guitar or a keyboard playing
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah.
And
Okay, they both have distortion on it in some way. They both have some effect. So it was like, wait, what
yeah,
is that? You know, who cares?
well, in modern day, I mean, they're really blurring those lines, and you almost have to hear the actual attack, and even that can be simulated. So these
Exactly,
lines,
exactly, and, you know, you've got GarageBand and all the digital workspaces where you can just, you know, emulate all those instruments anyway, so it's like
so I mentioned the music and your passion for that as a way to explore an area of passion and how that might connect you to other people. So, you and I can talk about music all day long. You're my
that'll be a
nephew,
separate podcast. We'll have
right?
a little
But
music
but
discussion analysis podcast later, but
yeah, but you being my nephew, that I have other nieces and nephews too that don't share that same things. I don't love them any less. I don't,
no, 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 no.
I don't think any less of them. It's just way easier for me to talk to you because we can be engaged on that level and
We have a
never
shared
run out
national
of.
interest that not a lot of at a level that not a lot of other people have, you know, and also we share similar tastes. We both like progressive rock and,
Right.
like, weird funky stuff.
Yeah, well,
Not a lot of people right now have that taste, you
I
know, so
feel
it's
like
awful
I
cool.
learn a lot every time. You're always tuning me on to people I feel like I should have heard of but haven't. But what I'm getting at there is, so you've got this passion. Do you feel like you find other people of your age that share that connects you with them and helps you build sort of those experiential friendships that we were pointing to a minute ago?
Absolutely. I think a lot of my close friends that I have now, to this day, I live with a couple of my best friends from college still. And like my single best friend, it was my first best friend in college. We started our friendship because we were in line together for food, and I was wearing a Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon shirt, and he said, "Oh my god, I love that album," you know. And we just instantly had this thing go. And then 7 years later, 8 years later, however long it's been, we still have like a really great friendship, and a lot of that was based on music and other common interests we had. But I think I was a very shy kid in high school. I hadn't really found myself. I didn't know how to connect to others super well. I had some people that shared interests, and I had other people that also kind of felt like they didn't fit in that I got along with, and I could connect at a really deep level. But I couldn't do that for everyone. And I think music just like is a slightly more universal thing. I think everyone interacts with music in some way, even if they're not as passionate about it as you or I, or know as much about it as you or I, or listens to as much. They've got that one song that got them through a hard time, or they've got that one song that makes them feel happy. And so I think there is a real music more than other art forms is a real connector.
Well, you have such a, I mean, yeah, you're into progressive, but you're into really most, I don't know if there's many styles that you aren't somewhat familiar with. And
No, it's true. Just today I listened to a new trap rap album that came out. I listened to a new like I don't art pop, I guess. So I describe it. It was kind of genreless. And then I listened to 3 Who albums. That was my music listening today. So
okay.
all over this place.
I think I've probably mentioned to you before. I know I did that my essay to get into Tufts University was on why the Who is the greatest rock band of
That's
all.
right. That's right. And mine was about the Beatles. Mine was about the Beatles one
And
album
yours
and
did the
how it
Beatles,
was
yeah.
the first CD I remember opening up. I mentioned
So
that.
some things pass generations.
They do. They do. And but I think the real thing is I think people often feel the most themselves when they are pursuing passion, and I think a lot of people feel passionate about almost everyone feels passionate about at least a little bit of music. So it's a really easy connector because it brings out something like really positive and really like vibrant and something with forward momentum in us, some force
Yeah.
forward momentum.
Now, in the world of politics, we've got the two sides, and it's more polarized than it has been in my lifetime before. And it's I think almost everybody who has a stance one way or the other has a difficult time discussing things with those on the opposite side of the fence. And this is not a good thing because we have one place we're occupying and we're trying to live by the same governance.
Hmm.
So we can only tolerate so much discord in our system before things break down.
It's true.
uh, we need to maintain the ability to talk, because when you stop
Hmm.
that, then the only way to resolve the differences is to fight.
Yep.
So
Yep.
prefer to
Well, because
talk
then you
than to
feel threatened
fight.
by everyone, and if you feel threatened by someone, you're going to be capable of doing everything you're afraid of back over to them, and then some.
So my
You gotta
question
break through those
is,
barriers. And again, I agree. I think finding connections is finding real human connections is the key. And I think
yeah.
music's
So
a great one. I think
what are
food is
some
another
others?
great one I found. Everyone
What
has some opinion on food, whether they're picky
food?
or like will eat everything.
Food, music. It used to be culture, it used to be, there was a shared experience of culture when there were 3 network channels and the big movie studios put out big movies every
Yep.
weekend, and
Yep.
there was a set, easily understood number of things we could discuss. Now there's a billion shows. It's cool because whatever you're into, you can find something.
Yeah, any niche exists and exists easily, you can just get it whenever. But
Yeah,
again, we have lost some of that like communal kind of that shared experience as we were talking about before.
and even
These are no longer shared experiences. They're very niche experiences.
and so does that fuel the divide that we were talking about before, do you think?
I think a
Or
little bit. I think it's more of in a lot of ways it's a consequence of the divide. I think a lot of the divide, at least again, I'm going to speak for my generation and,
sure.
and kids. Something I see in kids, and I think it's social media. Again, they haven't fully formed their identities yet because they haven't been able to like overcome a lot of hardship and see where they begin and end. So they're just kind of their self worth is nebulous. So they can only grab onto the things that like they know are them. So they end up being really surface level things like opinion, like the way someone looks, like the clique they belong to, like whatever group they kind of associate themselves with. And I think part of that is because information overload from the internet. I think part of that is because, schools have changed. The consequence of that is that people hold their opinions in super high regard. Like it's a part of them, even more so.
Well, that's a
Attacking
trap.
someone for some disagreement you have, even if it's not political, even if it's like just some, opinion on a sports team, sometimes it can be like tantamount to attacking their moral character because they hold it in a in such a high regard to like their own identity.
Yeah, so this is a big trap, right?
Yep.
Because when we get too invested in our opinions, we are no longer open to learning. And when we're young, hey, when we're old, we got a lot to learn, much less when we're young.
Yep. Yep.
So
It's true.
we
I'm
lose
still learning, Lord knows.
we
But
lose sight. Yeah, me too. We lose sight of the proper level of humility if we're just worrying about, if we're trying to take our opinions and make them our foundation.
exactly. But they're
Um,
really weak. They're really flimsy. We change our opinions all the time. They
Well,
also like not everyone thinks about things super hard. People have different levels of comprehension for different material, right? So like, but they're putting the same amount of like thought or like of moral weight on each of their opinions as the there's no differentiation between them. So like,
so this
I know
is
a lot about
why.
music, but I know nothing about sports. I think a lot of people my age, and I try not to fall down this camp though. Like if they were like me and didn't know anything about sports, but if I like the Red Sox and you were like I hate the Red Sox, I would get really angry and have some stupid defense that I don't really know, but I believe it. That's just an example. Things being
Yeah.
flimsy, they don't hold up. It's not sound. It's not a sound material to build a foundation.
If I'm identifying myself with an opinion, then any fact that countermands that opinion is a threat.
Yep, exactly. And you either have to run away from those things or destroy them.
So this is a big problem because not only are we at odds with those that see it different, we're no longer equipped to learn from them.
No, no. Well, we don't really know how to properly learn. I think too. I
Yeah,
think
talk about that a little bit, Tim.
yeah. I think again, school doesn't give you a lot of opportunities to make a ton of mistakes and learn from those. You just again you kind of coast, and when that happens, like you run away from anything that could shake that little foundation of a coast you have.
Was that true even at Catholic University?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely,
Really? Wow.
absolutely. It was probably less true there than other places, but no, it was still there all the time. I felt it. I felt it when I started too, but I think that we just kind of are all right all the time. Kids, some kids are have specific circumstances where they either excel or the opposite of that. They have troubles, but most kids are just all right all the time and never learn how to be exceptional, whether that be good or bad, and kind of find niches and go towards those things. So they're just perpetually jacks of all trades and masters of none. And so they can't really take the lessons from those things they're like okay at. They just it's all about maintaining course, but it's not towards anywhere. It's an aimless maintaining course. And so
So that would make it very difficult for you to find out the unique set of gifts that you have, because
exactly,
you might not
exactly
be the
that.
smartest, you might not be the fastest, you might not be the best looking, you might not be the most agile, but there's some combination of traits that you have that's a unique thing to you,
Exactly.
and without being tested, you can't find that.
No, no. You don't know where they begin or end, and you don't really, you care. And confronting that's scary because it shakes the only
And
foundation even if
in
it's
the
a really
eye,
flimsy one.
yeah, and in the eye of power, the purpose quadrant, which I'm pointing to here,
Mhm.
is fueled by finding those things, developing them, and then putting them to best use and highest use in the world in the service of other people. And that's how we derive meaning and purpose. So, what I'm hearing you say, Tim, is that we're either stunting, if not completely robbing, your generation of the means of finding purpose and meaning.
I think so. No, I really do think so. I think people like things, but they don't know how to go about the things they like. That's not a thing we foster anymore. We kind of stifle that.
The
Uh,
thing, and when you say stifle, the other thing I thought you might go to when you're talking about being challenged in school and what we're taught and what we're not. I've noticed a dearth, and it's been always been true, but I think it's getting more true that we aren't really taught critical thinking. We're not taught the logical
exactly that.
forms. We're not
Exactly
taught
that.
how the fallacies, right? So
No, no, no. We're not taught logic, first of all of those
yeah,
things, rhetoric, fallacies that come with that. But the real thing is we're not taught to ask questions. We don't know how to question things. So we don't know how to learn from them. That's another way we don't know how to learn. Yes. The way you pass a test is by giving the exact stuff that you've learned, or just regurgitation, even like the essay questions, like if you can just string ideas together, that's enough, it doesn't matter how sound the point is. It doesn't matter how like well argued your point is. If you can just make a connection, it's enough. So kids
that's
don't learn how
sad.
to differentiate like good from bad, but also true from untrue, or they don't know how to follow their instincts when something's right or wrong. Factually, that's another way they're nebulous and kind of coasting.
That's super sad because when you think about what is writing is thinking, right? What
Exactly
it
right.
is, it's thinking,
It's
and
organized
to,
thinking. Exactly.
and to be clear in your thinking is powerful, and to be unclear in your thinking is the opposite.
So, and we're talking about agency. So this is one of the big ways I think my generation has been robbed. I think back to my time in school, and I think a few teachers did break through that and did get me to pursue things I liked and did get me to ask questions about material or would give some argument or some narrative and then make you question it and argue either side and still have a debate. But they were few and far
Yeah.
between, and they were kind of going against their curriculum. They were just doing it because they cared about it, you know?
Well, you can't get rid of, there's going to be those high performers. There's going to be those geniuses. There's going to be the Pareto, right? So it's 20 to 80% of the work. And then within that 20, there's another Pareto. So you get down to
Yep, yep,
5%.
yep,
And
yep,
so
exactly.
you get about 5% of whatever it might be, no matter what the profession is, that are just brilliant. And despite the tectonic flow of things, they're still cutting through and just making huge differences for people. And it's,
Because I also think a big part of it is that kids don't feel seen in school. They just kind of
oh,
feel like
okay.
they're a part of some blob. So any teacher that can like get something out of it, like challenge them a little bit, push them a little further, or just like level with them, see that they're like stressed out, not having a good time, struggling, and just say, hey, what's wrong? I see you as a person. I think that has gone a huge way for a ton of kids I know. I know it went a big way in my life. So there's a human connection component that school is missing, but you can't totally break because it's made up of people and people will make those connections.
Well, there's a connective tissue between all the things that you're raising there. The idea of not being seen, the idea of, you started saying, the idea of, I don't know where I begin and end as an individual. So that individuation. So by not challenging, by not giving the opportunity to find out where my limits are, I have a nebulous sense of that special bouquet of flowers that make up my particular makeup as a person.
Exactly.
And
They're just
then,
a bunch of colors in the bouquet. You don't
right.
see where
So,
the flowers begin and
and
end.
it's no more beautiful, or it's no more or less beautiful than anybody else around. So it doesn't really seem to have a significance, or it doesn't seem to matter.
Exactly.
And
And
then
so you feel lost. And
without
so,
those stakes,
this is where the self love comes from. Like, it's hard to love yourself when you can't differentiate yourself from anyone else, and it's also hard to love yourself when you can't be proud of things. And a lot of these kids never really have a chance to be proud of something, to pursue something that they just enjoyed, and to take pride in the work they did.
all right. So we're here now. What can we do for those that are in that space that would like to move ahead? And then perhaps after that, what can we do to not continue to do that to the next generation? What are your ideas along those lines, Tim?
Well, I think the first level is getting a good message to these kids. It's harder to change systems. It's easier to talk to people. I think the first thing kids should know is that they matter. They're worth it. They're special, unique, and beautiful, and wonderful. And that it's okay that they're stressed out. It's okay that they have all these things. But the way out isn't to run away. The way out is to address these things. And addressing these things doesn't take handling them all at once and then they're magically gone. You chip away at it a little bit over time. So what I tell some of the younger kids in my career, like interns I've had and different people under me, is that they should do a little bit more than they're comfortable with every day, whatever that means. If something's giving them a little bit of anxiousness, take some little chip off that you can address and try to do something towards that. It doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit more. Like spend a little bit of energy on it. And this is what I kind of found for myself. I started doing because I used to have very severe social anxiety and I used to kind of hide away and run away from the world. But I slowly got over that, and that wasn't by like just magically, it all going away. It was like finding little connections between people, and that kind of got me outside of things. But the real thing was like, I started spending energy on things that I would run away from, and even just a little bit. And then I found after, a couple of weeks of doing that, I could do more in that with that same amount of time, that same amount of energy, and then more and more after a couple of months, and it builds and it compounds.
That's good advice. In the Aya Power system, that we work on that. I call them SIA, sustained incremental actions.
Love
That
that.
that it's just little things that you have to sustain. Right? It doesn't change overnight, but it also goes faster than you might think too,
Exactly.
because it's compounding. Right? Little
Yes.
thing
Yes.
you get to build on the. You do something that pushes your comfort zone a little. Now your next thing that you're taking on, you're starting at a higher place, and it keeps going and going. So it takes
Mhm.
less time than you might think to make big strides for that reason.
Exactly right. And you're still going to have bad days. It's not just, all up,
That's right.
like it's life. There are ebbs and there are flows. But
Yep.
even when it ebbs, even when it's going towards a direction you don't like, if you got to keep maintaining course, you'll be surprised at how better you do, and how much better you are at addressing those things, even when you feel sad.
Yeah. I
But you
think of
just
like this, I think of a stock ticker, right? It's
yeah,
going
yeah,
up, it's
exactly,
going
exactly,
down. You never know what it's going to do day to day, but hopefully the slope is up over time. If the thing itself is solid and giving value, then its slope
exactly.
will be up over time.
And then, as you go, you find what works, you find what doesn't. You start applying critical thought. But I mean, the first thing is to just start addressing these issues slowly every day. And again, it totally compounds. And I totally agree with all that. So I think that's the real message. The start is getting kids to see that and getting kids on that track. And that
Yeah.
may mean doing things outside of school. It may mean just, kids have tons of interests, they still do. It just may mean, like, playing a little bit more guitar every day if you're into music. To go back to that, it may mean playing a little bit more basketball every day. It may mean, reading another book, but so finding those things that they love and kind of pursuing those, I think is one place to start. Then I think that the next thing is, education has to foster that. It has to bring back some sort of critical thought. And there are a ton of ideas on how to do it. I'm not an expert on education, but I do have a vested interest, and I did go through school, so I do have some ideas. But again, I think the real thing is give more kids more of an opportunity to like explore ideas, to question things, to like different interpretations of narratives, and asking them which one works and why.
Yeah. For those coming out of school now, they're going to have to find non-academic places to do that. So obviously, I'm trying to build the eye of power as something that would be a positive force in this way. Organizations have to be a nurturing place for growth.
Yep.
I believe
Yep.
that. I think it's going to be more and more true as time goes on.
Well, I think it'll need to be. Otherwise, organizations will fail.
Exactly.
I think the best way to judge an organization is to judge the amount of high quality individuals inside of that organization. And it'll be pretty clear what organizations have the best amount of high quality individuals that can produce the best work. And I think the best way to do that is to nurture people and give them autonomy and give them a chance to kind of spread their wings and be there to catch them if you fall a little bit. But
Yeah, that's very measurable. I mean, I I've worked in the field of helping with people strategy for a
mhm,
long time now, over 20 years. And what I've noticed and what I preach is, you need more than your fair share of superstars,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
That's how you win.
That is how you
And
win.
and so what's a superstar, right? Well, that's where the attributes of the person match the needs of that particular role in that particular organization, and you're getting that match right, and you're removing the barriers that allow that person to put more of their energy into that thing, into those things that they're naturally great at, and so that their passion builds, right? And they have
Hmm. Hmm.
freedom and autonomy to be able to do it their way. And that's a tricky thing to find. It's
Incredibly tricky, and
because
you can
as
really
you get
only do
more
it through trial
people,
and
it's
error.
harder to
You can't just like
orchestrate.
plan that. You got to find it.
Yeah. And the more people on the team, the harder it is to leave that leeway for people
Hmm.
to express themselves in that way. And it takes you have to build a culture of trust. You have to build
You
a
do
culture where
exactly.
people are allowed to make mistakes and learn.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
And admit where they're wrong and ask for some help when they need it. But also when they have something they're really confident in, give them the trust to go out and pursue that fully.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take away from this, Tim, that I'm helping the younger generation by
I
creating.
think you are. I think this is a message people need to hear. And that's kind of why I wanted to come on here. I think kids need to know it's okay to love yourself, and you need to love yourself. That's the only solution to everything. There's no top-down solution to like save your life. You have to start with you and then build from there.
I love
And it's
that
okay to
message.
do that, and you're going to struggle, but you're also going to find really really beautiful things. And it's all a part of the journey, and it's all okay. And you got to love yourself. You're worth loving.
Yeah, I'd expand on that just by saying the type of love looks like really respect. And what does respect mean? It
Mhm.
means value, right? So
Yep.
what I hear you saying there is you have to learn to value the attributes that you and only you have been given. And when I say
Exactly.
value them, I mean and respect them, I mean value them enough so that you invest in those to develop them and put them at use to serve other people in a way that produces results that they like.
Exactly. And the first step is learning what those are. And
Yep.
to do that, again, it involves some trial and error and just going
Well,
out and
and
really.
that I just to set the expectation, I'll just tell you that's an ongoing thing
Oh, of
because
course, of
we are
course.
not stasis, right? We're works in progress, and that's true to the day we die. So it's always a refining and a building process, no matter who you are, what stage of life you're in. The things that you focus on can shift and change, but the process of growth is a continual thing because
Mhm.
the world is wonderfully, wonderfully complicated, way more than what we can
Exactly.
handle. So
And just when it seems simple, all this complication comes in. You're like, oh man, how did I
it o-
miss that?
it only seems simple because you don't know enough.
Exactly right. And simple is very temporary. I find is
Yeah.
what I find.
Yep. Well, Tim, thanks so much, man. I've enjoyed our conversation. I think it's valuable, especially for those that are entering the workforce or just recently entered the workforce, or those that are trying to help those people that are just entering the workforce. So I think that's a pretty wide swath of people. So I think this is a valuable conversation, and I hope people take something from it as it relates to how they might either expand themselves or maybe inspire somebody next to them to take that respect, that love, that investment in themselves to move forward.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for having me on.
Oh,
Again,
you're
this is
very
a
welcome, Tim.
message I feel very strongly
Always
about. It's something I
always
believe in.
great, always great to be with you.
Absolutely.
Yep. Hey, Tim, thanks so much for being on with me, and thank you for everybody for listening to our discussion. I think it was super valuable to look at what are those challenges for kids in school now that have recently entered the workforce. How are they likely to differ as it relates to their approach to their roles, their careers, and what can we do about it? And Tim gave some very good insights. He was talking about, they're not sure, they haven't been stretched, they haven't been able to see their unique gifts, they haven't been taught maybe critical thinking, and so they're feeling a little lost, a little they're maybe glommed on to opinion and not knowing how to get off of that opinion without it feeling very scary and very threatening. And so, what are we supposed to do with that? Tim's message was, kids need to know how and when to just start. And he gave, I think, the best advice that I know, which is you start small. You start at the things that you can do and just little things that you can sustain, and you take it from there and you build on that. So he mentioned pushing through discomfort or do one more thing in a day, just push yourself just that little bit more. uh, I couldn't think of a better plan for growth. I mean, if you think about anything you want to do, if it's gaining a skill, you do it a little bit longer. If it's gaining strength, you push that weight until you just can't do it anymore. If you're looking to have endurance, you push yourself just that little bit. If you want to be skilled on the phone, you make a few more phone calls. Whatever that thing might be, you do it more. And so that's a great place to start. Doesn't take any magic. It's just a decision that you make. So the bottom line is everybody, in fact, is the hero of their own story and can be more the author of their own fate. So I think that's a great message. And Tim, thank you so much for your clear voice on that, and you're living that, and you're doing it. And I couldn't be more proud. And I'm so glad that you're my nephew. And I love the chances that we get to talk, and we'll get some more time to spend more time together. So thank you, Tim. This has been the Eye of Power podcast with Tom Dardick. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'd also like to thank my brother, Scott Dardick, for the music and his music production. If you'd like to reach me, simply email Tom at dardickcommunications.com.